Hello and welcome to CATEX-TV. I'm Tom Bailey in London. It's 4:30 PM in London, 11:30 Eastern Time and 12:30 in Bermuda. Today in history. Today in 1613, not very far from here in London, William Shakespeare's Globe Theatre burnt down. It was rebuilt in the 1990s and is now one of the popular tourist attractions in London. It was rebuilt in its original form and Shakespeare's plays are performed there daily. Today in 1864, the Grand Trunk Railway accident killed 100 people, and today in 1952, the first aircraft carrier, called Oriskany, sailed around Cape Horn. It was amazing that only in 1952 did an aircraft carrier sail around Cape Horn. And now to the news today. After 6 months of negotiations, the participants in the New York Insurance Exchange documentation and recommendation project are about to report back to the New York Commissioner. The 7 working groups devising recommendations for certain aspects of running for the New York Insurance Exchange have reported their findings back to State Insurance Superintendent James Rinn. A wrap-up meeting took place in New York yesterday following 6 months of negotiations, and the general consensus is market practitioners are excited about the prospect of relaunching the exchange, which failed miserably in the 1980s. Jeff Mace, a partner at Dewey & LeBoeuf LLP in New York, sat on a couple of the working groups and said a primary driving force for an exchange is it could act as a point of entry. He explained there is a real interest in creating something where people can come to the exchange and be granted trading privileges, not necessarily in every jurisdiction in the US, but with as many states as possible. It is believed another driving force behind the demand to reinstate the exchange is that the US wants to put a cap on the flow of insurance premium going offshore, which is estimated to be around $8 billion annually. The working group's proposal will allow Rinn's office, the New York Insurance Department, which will put together a formal business plan to flush out some of the issues that have arisen over the last 6 months, notably those concerning rating agencies, corporate governance, and how to get a central fund equivalent to that at Lloyd's, and the actual cost associated with the exchange. Obviously this is quite an exciting development for the industry, and we'll keep you updated on this. The European Union is funding research at Reading University aimed at detecting suspicious behaviour on board aircraft. A combination of cameras, microphones, explosive sniffers and sophisticated computer system will give a pilot early warning of any danger. The work will alarm civil liberties campaigners who fear the growth of the surveillance state. The Reading team, headed by James Ferryman, has conducted trials of the camera system on a British aerospace plane and the computer system on a mock Airbus. Similar systems have been deployed at stations and airports around the world using CCTV to gather information and software to analyze it. The software looks out for unusual behavioral events such as a case being left unattended or an individual going against the crowd flow. Mr. Ferryman said what we are doing is extending technology already used at airports and railway stations and placing it on aircraft. Cameras dotted around an aircraft would look out for abnormal events such as several passengers entering a laboratory at the same time, or individuals seemingly agitated. We've got quite a lot of tropical storm activity going on, as you'll see from the chart. I think probably most importantly is Tropical Depression Alex, which is in the Gulf of Mexico. As you can see, the system is currently heading northwards, but is anticipated to veer to the northwest. It's currently got sustained winds of 20 knots, and it's a tropical depression. It's forecast to strengthen and then weaken as it makes landfall. We've got a following story about that, so we'll give you more information in a minute. Meanwhile, we've got Tropical Depression Celia, which is in the northeastern Pacific, currently with sustained winds of 30 knots. Celia is a tropical depression and is still on course towards the Hawaiian Islands, those expected to dissipate before then. And finally, Tropical Depression Darby, with sustained winds of 25 knots, having headed west-northwestwards, has now turned actually eastwards and is heading for Central America, but we'll keep you posted on any of those developments. Tropical Storm Alex, which we just looked at, is reported to have killed at least 10 people in Nicaragua, Guatemala and El Salvador. There is potential that it could reach hurricane strength today, though it's looking less likely. It is projected to travel well west and south of the British petroleum oil spill at the Deepwater Horizon site, which lies about 50 miles off the Louisiana coast. But BP plans to move a third containment vessel to the site of the leak. These plans could be pushed back by about a week due to the high waves and high winds, according to a company spokesman yesterday. The US government officials estimate that 35,000 to 60,000 barrels of oil are gushing from the blown out well each day. We'll keep you posted on that and any other changes that the tropical storm activity may generate. We're also analysing the Eastern Atlantic and the south of the Caribbean Sea to see if any Atlantic tropical storms are forming. The sea surface temperatures, which are always a good indicator of the likely frequency and severity of those storms, are higher than the annual average, so we can expect both storms to form and those storms to be perhaps more powerful than the average. Regulatory changes that are under discussion in Europe and the United Kingdom and the United States are the biggest concern right now on the mind of Sean McGovern, the director of Lloyd's North America and Lloyd's General Counsel. Mr. McGovern said that the reforms facing the insurance and financial services industry right now are, quote, mind-blowing. There's potential to be game-changing depending on how it comes out. In the wake of the financial crisis of 2008, regulators and lawmakers have been looking at revamping the rules that govern banks and insurers. US Congress is considering massive financial services regulatory overhaul. In the United Kingdom, a new coalition government recently announced plans to replace the Financial Services Authority with a new regulatory structure. And in the European Union, leaders have been continuing to work on rolling out a new regulatory framework called Solvency II. McGovern said there's a real danger here. The US and UK economies are in somewhat fragile state. I worry that things are being done that we may regret. He said that there's a huge shift of wealth from the west to the east, with China and India gaining economic power. China and India will be the engines of the world economy. We in the US and the UK need to make sure we remain competitive in the world market. Financial services are highly mobile, capital-intensive businesses that can be restructured and relocate very quickly, said McGovern. If it is more capital efficient to be located in Shanghai or Singapore, banks will move there in a heartbeat, as is evidenced by the new defunct deal between the UK's Prudential PAC and American international groups AIA. Predominantly Western insurers are trying to position themselves in the growing Eastern market, he said. McGovern said he's concerned that policymakers will sweep up the insurance industry in measures intended to improve banking. He continued that the insurance industry globally is facing a period of huge uncertainty as to what regulatory framework will look like. This is the biggest challenge that the industry faces around the world. McGovern said he's pleased to see the International Monetary Fund's recommendation on a levy on financial institutions to pay for future bailouts be limited to banks and not insurers. He said that is good news for us and it sets a healthy precedent. He continued, it's a key theme for the industry. A huge amount of work has gone into encouraging policymakers that insurers don't create systemic risk. We don't need to be overburdened with lots of additional capital requirements and regulations. He said the proposed National Insurance Office in the US is a crucial step forward for us. For the United States to be as dependent as it is on international reinsurers, who provide about 60% of the insurance coverage for US catastrophes, policymakers should, he said, make it as easy as possible for us to do business. The state-based system is not efficient. That's all from us today. We'll be back with you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, thank you very much for joining us, and goodbye.